All right, this is what happens when you leave it up to me and you don't plan things. And I didn't actually. This is technically Nuno's thing. Is he supposed to ask me? Do we want to do a Luchador Sunday? In true non-Buzz Williams fashion, I'm going to throw Nuno under the bus and say he is actually taking a much-needed Sunday off. We had no plans to do this. And I was sitting there today about to get on with my Sunday, and I said, we got a bowl game to talk about. We got this college football playoff madness to talk about, and we got, the all the goings on within the program with a new head coach and searching for assistants and portal and this and that and the other thing. So we need to get together and talk. And I walk into the office, and I find these two.
The B team.
The
Brauninger and Buchanan.
Okay, and Billy. I'll take it. There you go. It's a B team podcast. Billy, Brawny, Buke.
I wanted,
Buke.
Buck.
Yeah, I've been called worse.
Buck.
Often. I wanted to put on the mask and see if anybody would have recognized, hey, who's the mystery luchador?
Your wife is out there,
Yeah.
and she is of Hispanic heritage.
She is.
She might have really enjoyed that.
All right.
Well,
I don't know where that's going, but
the mask.
so here comes Zane in all his Michigan regalia and all his glory.
Might be a good segue.
Are the Lions winning, Zane?
It's 21-0.
Okay, 7-7.
21-0.
What the hell are you talking about?
Needed
The
up
Lions are up on the
21-7.
Saints. 21. Oh, it's 21-7 now.
In a game matching A&M coaches, right?
Yeah,
That's right.
Dan Campbell, Dennis Allen.
It's the Aggie Bowl. You got Aaron Glenn. You got Michael Hodges. You got a lot of Aggies in this one. Texas A&M in the Texas Bowl. Oklahoma State. Deja vu, right? Oak State and Mike Gundy come in here with a suspect quarterback and a terrific nation, one of the top, leading the nation in rushing yards.
1,600
Used to be
yards.
Chuba Hubbard, now it's Ollie Gordon. Anais Smith starts his career essentially playing running back in that bowl game. Found out yesterday he's not going to be playing this year, 5 years later with a broken finger. Look, guys, you start in the Houston Bowl, you end it. Year 2 under Jimbo, they're in the Houston Bowl. Year 6, you're in the Houston Bowl. A 1-year spike in there that provided a lot of hope. But now you kind of see why you're going through a coaching change. If nothing screams lack of progress, then kind of returning back to a bowl that's way down the pecking order in the SEC, 90 miles down the road. Look, the fans are going to turn out. It'll be a fun one for us to go to and cover. But again, you've kind of been spinning your wheels. Meanwhile, Texas will be playing that week for a chance to return back to Houston.
Yeah, probably in the Rose Bowl, right?
No,
they're in the
Sugar. But they'll be playing that week for a chance
Sugar Bowl.
to return back to to Houston to play for a national championship in year 3 under a head coach. And look, people don't like that. Texas doesn't matter. They do matter. And when Texas is in it and Bama's in it, it's a Bama team you coulda, shoulda, woulda beat at Kyle Field. You understand just how necessary change was, and there is a lot of change going on, and we'll talk about that. But y'all's impressions on the bowl destination and opponent.
Well, first of all, hey, they're in a bowl game.
Yep.
2 years ago they just didn't go, which was a big mistake.
Yeah.
Because I'm always told how important it is to get those extra practices, and then you just don't take them. Okay, so I didn't get that. And then
I will say it was a weird time.
Yeah, it was, but
weird time. But
then,
a year later, you're right. It wasn't It wasn't COVID. It was a year later COVID.
And then last year they don't qualify. So you're in the Houston Bowl, and quite frankly, nothing against the Houston Bowl, right?
Yeah.
A&M has greater aspirations. Okay, the Houston Bowl people understand.
I think the Texas Bowl has greater aspirations.
I meant the Texas Bowl.
I've always thought they should. I'm surprised they haven't climbed the ladder. I wish they would. I think they should.
I've been to high school football games in the last 2 weeks at NRG Stadium. It's a really cool place. They did a great job with the design. It's very nice. It's media friendly. I know there's some issues like when they have triple header high school games there of getting kids in and out. But in terms of a one-game venue, it is really nice. And I love when stuff comes to Houston. Like you said, I wish we were kind of dealing with a different scenario, the opposite scenario where A&M's playing for a chance to go to Houston. But this is what it is. And I do think because of the coaching change, I actually think the A&M fans will probably show up with a little bit more fervor than they would have if they'd held on to Jimbo Fisher and like, oh, we're back here again.
Unfortunately, guys, there's a lot of deja vu because we did this also between Mike Sherman and Kevin Sumlin.
That's right. That's actually right.
Tim DeRuyter coached the team. Yep. Ryan Tannehill won the MVP. They beat Northwestern.
Ben Molina had a touchdown, I believe.
Yeah, that game cost me a 3-team parlay in Vegas.
Did it really?
Yeah, it did.
Damn it.
I was so hoping Bullock would miss that last field goal.
Bullock didn't miss many field goals.
Not that year.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to see them go through a game this year without a missed
Was that
field
Mike
goal.
Kafka, the quarterback at Northwestern?
I think so.
Was it Kafka?
Yeah, I was at that game. I can't.
But the last time they were in the Texas Bowl was against Oklahoma State. What happened the very next year?
They won a New Year's Six.
Right. I mean, they should have been in the playoff.
Yeah.
Right?
No pressure, Coach Elko.
Yeah. So just saying that sometimes those, I don't want to call it obscure or lesser, but those, I don't know what secondary bowl games, they can be a great launching point for the next year. So maybe that'll be the case.
I'm interested to see how it gets coached.
Well,
right?
that's what's here's two things that fascinate me on this, and the nerve-wracking part is, will A&M look like LSU against K-State a couple of years ago when Ed O got fired and they had like 35 scholarship kids? I don't expect that.
Was that last year in the Texas Bowl?
It was 2 years ago, before Brian Kelly.
Okay, that's right.
But how many guys are not going to play? You know, how many of these and I don't think it's going to be like a mass exodus, but how many of these seniors or NFL-bound guys are not going to play? We've already heard of Nias. I'm not going to just go through names and assume guys can play. You guys understand who they are, though. We know who the veterans are. Then you're going to mix in whether you had Jimbo change to Elko, hired any coach in the country, you're going to have some portal attrition too, because that portal opens up in a few days. So between the portal, between guys opting out that are older, I'm going to be
skeleton crew
really interested to see who's sitting there playing. The good news is, I think you'll have your quarterback making his fourth start, and Jalen Henderson. So that part gives me hope that you could get out there and play.
You don't have a play caller.
Well, you do. That's what I think will be interesting. You don't have Bobby Petrino,
right? And Jimbo left.
I think you'll have Chaney. My guess would be Chaney. Here's how I could see it going: Chaney calling plays, Coley at wide receiver, Spurlock, who's a longtime GA here, who has worked with the tight ends before. I forget what happened then. There was maybe a coach had left and he had to do the bowl game, tight ends. I believe that was the case. I believe he'll be at tight end. I think O-line, I think it'll be Coach Luce with both Adazios.
Grayson Reed's been on the road.
Grayson Reed's been out. So those guys will coach O-line. It is truly like a piecemeal thing. You're very fortunate to have a guy like Coley has called, he's been OC at many stops actually around the SEC, and Chaney is a lifetime OC with pretty basically as much experience as Petrino had. So, but it is a mess offensively. Yeah. It's a mess, and that's what happens when you have coaching change. And Petrino, I'm sure they would have liked to have held on to him through the bowl game, but he's got a career to chase as well, and it actually saved A&M some money. Mm-hmm. And I hope the Aggies go and whip their holy ass next year in Jerry World.
Yeah. Don't you think? I'm interested to see what Mike Elko does in this game, because I remember when Jimbo came in and they were playing, was it in Charlotte, the Belt Bowl?
Wake Forest.
Yeah, and Jimbo was in a suite, I believe.
I was in there with him watching it.
Oh, really?
I remember hearing him say, why the hell do they get in shotgun on 4th and 1? And I was so excited about that, and it took them until this year to
run a quarterback
do that.
But I've also – I believe there's been coaches that have come in and they'll just sit on the sideline on the headset, not say anything, sit in the booth. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how Elko handles all that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he's in an observation period for not only players but also the coaches.
And I think especially players. We'll talk about that in a minute. I don't think there'll be a ton of coaching turnover, but I think especially.
You don't think there will be a lot of coaching?
No, I mean, I don't think there'll be a ton of coaching retention.
Okay.
I've said before, I think 1 or 2.
Yeah, if I didn't catch you on that one, I know you don't like being corrected, but if I don't catch you on that one,
thank you for that. Oklahoma State, though, will be interesting. Will Ollie Gordon play? You know, he was banged up in and out of that Texas game. I think that might have been more frustration than anything else, but he's been there 3 years, right?
He's a sophomore. He's got a class of 22. This is his second season.
It is only his second. Yeah. I thought he was a redshirt sophomore.
So he's class of 2022.
So he's not NFL bound. The question is, does a guy like that look portal with the way their season went? You know how much he could command on the open market? I mean, Mike Gundy has not done a very good job of retaining guys and kind of fighting that portal battle, which is why it was kind of interesting when people were even floating his name for this job. I was like, does he seem to have embraced the NIL and the portal? Because they had a mass exodus.
They did.
Which is why I think he did a hell of a job this year. But Ollie Gordon.
He's a real player, man.
Real player.
Howell loved him coming out of Euless Trinity.
Howell did. A&M missed on two backs, big time. That you look at Jonathan Brooks at Texas, who really wanted to flip.
Yeah.
During the Tom Herman transition there. Because remember, they didn't fire him, but things were going real south. Then they ultimately did. There were a lot of people over that neck of the woods that wanted A&M to take him, and then the same thing, like you said, with Ollie Gordon up there. So I'm just saying, without Ollie Gordon, this game looks a lot different. With him, the Aggies.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe the prospect of leading the nation in rushing is a motivating factor for him. But you never know who he's listening to either.
God, he could get paid. He could get paid.
It's the stuff's already. It's crazy already. I have no idea. I mean, I know how we got here, and I guess you're short-sighted if you didn't think that it was coming to this point. But man, how do we stop it?
Can't.
I think bringing back if you transfer, you have to sit would quell a lot of this.
I agree.
But once you've opened the Pandora's box, like how do you get the genie back in the bottle?
I've talked to so many people that know a lot more than we do about this that have said, there's no way you're taking that part back. Because that does seem like the simplest way is to say, hey, unless your coach leaves, head coach, you have to sit a year, and they've said there's no way that they're taking that back from the players. Once they let them have that, they're not getting it back. I mean, we could talk all day of whether you unionize or whether players unionize or whether, you start doing revenue share and treating them as employees. Like, these are like the most drastic, dramatic, just shift the whole model type things. And maybe one day it'll get there. But for now, like, they need to be figuring out how, if there's any way, they can limit and affect tampering and things like that. And
that was the worst word in college football 2 years ago. Tampering.
Everybody and now nobody cares.
And nobody cares because
nobody gives a
we
damn.
know that there are coaches that are contacting kids months in advance to try to get them off of the current roster.
I'll just say this.
And not just the ones at USC.
There's at least one team in that playoff that are absolutely been tampering with A&M's roster, people on their staff for weeks now, several weeks, as soon as it looked like. So I hope that A&M and Mike Elko's new staff know how to play that game too, because they're not, it's part of college football today. And I will say this, just from talking the last few days, and Brauninger, you and I've had a lot of conversations just with each other, but also with people at every level of this thing. And it's like, there's so much encouragement from Mike Elko's side, like the people you talk to, in terms of just this vision, this plan, the structure, and how he's going to set things up in terms of roster management, player personnel. Look, let's just call it, I don't know what else to call it, but player acquisition. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about portal. I'm talking about NIL. I'm talking about recruiting, like player acquisition. I think you're going to see just organization and structure at every level. Hey, day-to-day recruiting, day-to-day NIL, and making sure we're not running into problems. By the way, day-to-day fundraising. That's a head football coach thing right there. And the head football coach needs to know. It doesn't need to be every assistant all the way down to GA analyst, like, hey, Brawny, our freshman running back, our linebacker that hasn't played it down, needs more. Let's get him more and work through a collective without the head coach kind of even being a part of that. Same thing. Hey, Olin, who's doing everything right as a junior, and he's a key role guy, but he's quiet and he's not pushing and leveraging for more money, but no one's there to go, hey, what about Olin? And that's how you get culture problems, and that's how you get guys unhappy and leaving. And I think Mike Elko, as a head coach, will be so on top of that. And people that have been dealing with him on that level are just incredibly encouraged.
Well, I think what you have to do is you have to have, I don't know if he's an employer or employee or it's somebody that runs the collective that you're in touch with. Mm-hmm. And you basically come up with a budget.
Absolutely.
And maybe you refer to the coach, say, okay, we want to spend this much on a quarterback and this much, and we're going to have this on the side for an emergency guy. Like, hey, this guy, we didn't know Edgerrin Cooper was going to have the kind of year he had, but now he's earned it. Yep. So, but it's just like you said, a player personnel director and something that you haven't had in college football. I want to know something. You mentioned fundraising. Something I've been thinking about writing a column about, and it's the absolute taboo thing, the thing that nobody's ever going to admit to.
Let's hear it.
Get ready. Get that dump button ready.
All right. Does the coach, understanding that the guys who are funding your program are probably betting on your team, does the coach go into a game understanding what the line is and trying to cover? He'll never admit to it, and I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Against, I think it was Mississippi State, A&M didn't cover because they missed a late field goal, but they got the ball back, and they had a chance. They could have kicked the field goal and covered, and they didn't. In the future, do I kick that because I know a lot of these guys in the collective are betting on my team, and if they have money, they're more inclined to put more money into the collective?
Well, I think they make a lot more money doing what they do than gambling.
I
would
get that,
hope.
but you can't have too much money that you can.
Yeah,
that was kind of a page people were turning with the Connor Stallions stuff, though.
Yeah,
like how did we? Was there an element to that where Connor Stallions was talking to the boosters? I've got this sign stealing thing going. I'm going to work with you guys to fund all these trips, and in return, you're going to make a bunch of money because we're going to win. Like, there was like a conspiracy theory on all that.
Yeah, what y'all are saying is fine, but I think that you're going like so far down.
Maybe that's not as big a case at A&M as it might be at somebody else.
The lesser place that has to work. I think at A&M it's more about, look, are you winning games? Is there excitement for the program? I think there needs to probably, if I'm being real honest, a little fear-mongering that goes on into this. And I don't think I don't know who does it. I don't think it's the head coach because you can't say, oh, we need to, we're not going to. But I do think they need to understand and realize where A&M sits in reality in terms of NIL. And they're way up there in college football. But I saw a thing that said A&M was number one. That ain't the truth.
I think it's the team down the road.
It is. It absolutely is Texas. And look, nothing against it's legal. It is fortuitous timing. Just like, Jordan Travis's injury was.
Is that a segue?
We're about to, yeah.
Good, nice.
It's a delayed.
You've listened to Nuno.
Yeah.
Nice.
But it is fortuitous timing that NIL really exploded, during the year that Texas hired Sark, and they said, we're going to go all in on this NIL thing. This is a guy that can recruit. This is a guy that can bring the exciting offense. He's from the SEC. They got 2 years to ramp up to join the SEC and recruit in the SEC while playing a Big 12 schedule. The one crack they had this year at it, though, they took full advantage. They beat Alabama in Tuscaloosa. We'll talk about that in a minute. But NIL, like when you're flipping guys like after 6-6, like Banks from Oregon, you're getting, remember when Quinn Ewers was all but going to Tech. Mm-hmm. And Jeff Ketchum and the a couple of Texas outlets said he signed for first-round money. Again, this is not sour grapes. It's the way it goes. If we don't act like A&M players aren't getting very well compensated to play football here, then we're all sitting here lying. But they went all in. And you look at, like, getting a Baxter from the state of Florida. You look at, all the rumors were Xavier Worthy was out the door. Mm-hmm. Was it USC they were talking about? Xavier Worthy was out the door. Here he is. He's still in Austin. That's doing NIL right. But I think they're doing it bigger than anyone, A&M included. A&M's way up there, don't get me wrong. But you do have to sell and say, we need to be at the top and competitive with everyone, and you're not going to do that until you get a new coach in town that's got people excited. You weren't going to do that with a coach that went 12-12 the last 2 seasons, and while we're watching what's going on in Baton Rouge, continuing to go on in Tuscaloosa, what's happening in Austin, you weren't going to be able to generate that excitement, and I think those dollars are going to be hard to come by. So, Olin, I think what you're saying is fascinating kind of underbelly of things, but the reality is win games, at least generate excitement and hope that you can, and there'll be plenty to go around here in College Station.
Yeah, again, that wasn't a thought exclusively to A&M. I'm talking about Oklahoma State, Ole Miss, Mississippi State, whatever's going to help my guys make money, because then they'll contribut more.
Yeah.
So all right, so back to your segue.
Segue was the playoff.
Right.
And obviously there was a while there last night and today where I really was wondering if the SEC was going to be left out. And
I thought they should have.
I agree.
I've changed my tune. I'll tell y'all why in a minute. But I did too. I was like that the whole time. I'm always about the conference and what you play and the reality of it. The Texas Longhorns had an absolute cakewalk. There are probably 10 teams in college football that would have run the table on their schedule after Bama, and they lost one. There might be 15 teams that could have run it after OU. Okay, that was cake. Go look at it. Break it all down. Even K-State, who's the toughest one, that's barely ranked. No one brought up yesterday that Oklahoma State lost to UCF, and this has nothing to do with the bowl game in A&M.
Or South Alabama.
A&M's 7-5, okay? This is about the Texas Longhorns in the playoffs. No one mentioned that they lost by 6 touchdowns to UCF. They lost by 4 touchdowns at home to South Alabama. It was never brought up. They just said they looked great against Oak State. They didn't break down Oak State. Mm-hmm. They got a lot of run. I would have 100 times out of 100 argued that not only Bama but Georgia both should go over a one-loss Big 12 champion Texas. But there was that one thing, and to Texas's credit, and Ewers and Sark and everybody that played well and coached well that night, they went into Bryant-Denny and they beat Alabama. And I don't care if it was week 2. I don't care what I think would happen today. They beat them by 10 points, and they controlled that game. It wasn't a fluke. So that means there's no way in my head that Bama should go in over them.
Agree.
And there's no way that Georgia should go in over Bama, obviously. So now it's like, so it was either Florida State or Bama, really.
Right.
Do I think Georgia was one of the best 4 teams in the country? Yeah, I do. But they didn't. In a 14 playoff, they shouldn't have got in.
So what was your reasoning of why you think the SEC should get in?
I've been thinking about this today, and I've been a long time. We can talk about it. I'm not going to argue because I don't have the desire to argue because I get both sides. You know what I mean? Like, I love to argue, but not on this because I just think I was all about Florida State won the whole thing. They won every game. They won the ACC. They won a big game early against LSU. With Jordan Travis, I was like, they should be in. So now all of a sudden we're going to say they shouldn't without him. That doesn't feel right. Where do you cut the line off? Where do you cut off the line, like, in the future? Hey, A&M, the great defense, but Myles Garrett's hurt and he had 12 sacks. We should leave them out. Derrick Henry in Alabama, well, forget about the fact that Bama had 5 other running backs.
Just change the injury for Jordan Travis. He tweaks his hamstring. He doesn't visibly break his leg where we all can look at that and say, he's done.
Yeah.
Right?
It's like I heard somebody
You
suggest.
could say he's questionable for the playoffs. Yeah.
Right.
I heard somebody
Or just
suggest
lie and say,
that,
no, he's fine.
that what if Sarkisian yesterday said, "Oh, Xavier Worthy, he said he's okay."
Yeah, if he had like an ACL.
But what if he's not?
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Sarkisian's lying, but I'm just saying,
But why
what if a
wouldn't
coach? Yeah, because hey, we'll announce it, if he's really hurt on Monday. But let's wait till the committee comes out.
Heck yeah.
And then I watched Louisville. Louisville was averaging 33 points a game. They were number 31, I think, in the country in rushing. And they go out and play Florida State, and their Florida State defense plays out of its mind. Are we to say that teams other parts of a team doesn't rise up and play better? We've seen that throughout history. We saw it at Ohio State a few years. We saw it in the NFL with just a few years ago when Carson Wentz got hurt, and they won the Super Bowl with a backup quarterback and a good defense.
And was it a foregone conclusion that the Rodemaker kid's out for the playoffs too?
No, he should be back.
And if it's just about the quarterback, I'd like to make this point. If it's just about the quarterback, then why didn't USC win the national championship with a Heisman Trophy quarterback last year?
Yeah.
In fact, they couldn't beat Tulane. Yep. So you're saying, well, I don't think they can be good or they can be competitive because they don't have that quarterback.
The committee should be.
They said,
I
think what they're saying essentially is we've watched them without Travis, and they look like crap. But what I would say to that is, who played it tough? Who had a tougher road of it? Because we're all sitting here, and that's what Texas fans went crazy on me about me saying like style points. I don't give a damn about that.
Just win.
Just you beat Bama, okay? That's enough. Style points, my ass.
I think Texas should be in.
I do too.
No question.
I do too. But style points, do I think they had a cush road to get there? Yeah. But you put one giant test in front of them. Really, you put 2 in front of them and they split. But the one that really mattered, they won it. And it's fine. We've seen that a lot. What about Michigan? What'd they have? 2 giant tests and they won both. They didn't play. They played 2 teams with a pulse all year. Mm-hmm. So my thing is this. If I'm looking at Florida State, right, and what you guys are talking about, they beat Florida in the swamp, and they beat Louisville, like you said, that can score, that had a couple of noteworthy wins this year. They were a 10-2 football team.
Beat LSU.
I'm saying.
I thought you were talking about Florida State.
No, I'm saying Louisville was like. To beat Florida in the swamp and Louisville, to me, like, it's just like, it wasn't pretty football. It was ugly, dirty football. But you beat 2 better teams than Texas Tech and Oklahoma State, and the Texas fans won't want to recognize that. But I know Louisville, I think they lost to Pitt, which was inexplicable. But I don't see 45-3 to UCF and 33-6 to South Alabama in there. I think what Florida State's done the last 2 weeks, they won a couple of not gimme tough games with said quarterback.
I think it showed what a good team they are. Mm-hmm.
Well, and I argue this is the inverse now true, right?
Yeah.
What if Jordan Travis plays for 7 weeks? He looks like a Heisman Trophy contender. He rolls his ankle.
They lose one game.
He's out, right, for the remainder of the season until about this time. Yeah. He's going to come back. So he's strengthening the team. Does that thus strengthen the resume and help bump a team? Like, they've opened a door here.
I'll give you one. Texas loses to Alabama, and then Quinn Ewers gets that injury, and they lose to U of H. They beat OU, whatever. They lose to U of H without him, and they come back and win out and look dominant in doing so with Quinn Ewers. Are we just ignoring that one loss?
Right.
And saying,
oh, yeah.
Really, they're, or let's say they beat Alabama. My bad. They beat Alabama, but they lost a second game to U of H because Ewers got hurt.
Right.
It's the whole thing to me is stupid, but I will say this.
That's an all-time gut punch.
Imagine, this is the thing, though. I do think because of this damn playoff, a 13-0 Florida State and with Travis, and let's say they just haven't blown the doors off people, Bama beats LSU just as badly as Florida State did. You go and start comparing resumes otherwise. Bama beat number 1 Georgia. I mean, we've made this argument before that the 12-1 team, Bama played LSU. They played Texas, who's in the playoffs. They beat number 1 Georgia. You add up all the other games. We've made this argument before, and it's come off just on the other side because the undefeated Power 5 has never been left out. I'm saying the more I've looked at kind of their resumes and what they did, I am kind of like, with Jordan Travis, I think there would be an interesting debate. Florida State would have got in every time, but I think Bama would have had a legitimate argument. Hey, we're 12-1, they're 13-0. Let's look what we really both have done. And that's that conference-to-conference crap that at least is going to go away to a large extent with the expanded play.
But I think that the ACC had a winning record against the SEC.
They did.
They did.
6-4.
They did.
So it even makes it harder to make that argument.
It does, but I'm still like, I'm looking at like who played who, and I'm going, damn.
But
And
you're
you take
splitting
Bama's
hairs.
like first top 4 toughest games versus Florida State's, and it's
But
pretty
you'd be splitting hairs based off what you've seen on the field, and you're not taking into account an injury that nobody can control.
I don't think a committee should.
They should not be. They should not be. The committee should not be making decisions based on how they think the games will turn out,
Right.
because of what the rosters look like.
I agree.
Because that Florida State defense against that Michigan offense, and I think Corum's a complete stud. I could see
It'd be a rock fight.
Yeah, you could see Michigan in a 17-13 fourth quarter game against these guys.
Yep.
Maybe not. I don't know. I don't know Florida State.
But we don't know a lot about Michigan either, like you said.
Well, think about last year. Did anybody, if you were asking the people in the committee or really anybody anywhere, did anybody think TCU would beat Michigan?
No.
Yeah.
So, and TCU did.
Yeah.
And the point is, they're saying, well, Florida State now can't win. They just can't, so they shouldn't even have a chance.
Yeah.
I don't care what they've done. Well, the same people that would say that would have said, if you really asked them, oh, yeah, there's no way Michigan's going to lose to TCU.
Mm-hmm.
Well, they did, but
that's
there was
why you
precedent
play.
with Cardell Jones in 2014.
Right.
So what they're saying is, we'll put you in with your third-string quarterback, but it's got to look a certain way.
And you know what it's got to look like? It's got to look pretty. It's got to look like
It's kind of like what
And
happened
that
to
is-
A&M
that
in
is what they're
2020. Well, it didn't look right.
A&M it's been amazing to me to watch, and this is just the reality, and people can say what they want, but everyone knows it's true. The push by the talking heads to get Texas into this thing, and the push by the national media to get an SEC team into this thing at the expense of Florida State, and to get Texas in, where they literally ignored the tough talking. And tell me if I'm wrong. I did not hear very many tough talking points about Texas at all, and I think they should have been in. I do.
I was
but
covering
the
high school
push,
game.
I would put them
the
fourth.
push versus what was said against A&M. It's been fascinating to watch, and Olin, you're right on. Like, not one person ever brought up, we just saw what Clemson would have done to Notre Dame if Trevor Lawrence didn't have COVID. Never heard
Right.
it.
You're right.
Never
Not
heard
once.
it. No one ever said Ohio State has not been that impressive in their 6 games. Imagine if they had to play 9 or 10. What their chances of losing a game would. They never talked about that, especially the COVID thing with Trevor Lawrence. And Olin, you're right. You know where A&M. You know where they lost their playoff berth, in my opinion? They lost their playoff berth when they beat LSU 20-7 in the driving rain, in the ugly game where LSU was bad, and that game was like, I think it was 10-0 or 10-3 at halftime. It was they crucified the Aggies in that week after that game, and never really talked about that. They held that stigma the rest of the way through the discussion.
Well, I wonder if even that, because I'm of the mind that it really wasn't going to matter.
Yeah.
It was going to say, hey, you had Ohio State.
Notre
The
Dame
Big
and
Ten had to change their rules just to get Ohio State in. Notre Dame, which you just said, they had beaten Clemson without Trevor Lawrence. And, of course, Clemson and Alabama were going to get in. So you were saying, well, who has the bigger marquee name? And I kind of think that's one of the things. I know Florida State has a marquee name, but it's not as big as Alabama. And quite frankly, it's not as big as Texas.
No.
I'm not saying Texas shouldn't be in. I would have put Texas in at 4, but I would have had Florida State at 3.
Yeah.
Because it's like, what's the baseball term about the double? Never, you can never assume a double play, right?
Yeah.
So you can never assume that team. I don't think
You
that
look
team
like
was
you
going to
haven't
lose.
heard that one. Like he just out.
No, I didn't know.
baseballed your ass.
It came out of nowhere.
Yeah, he got
You can never assume. I think the law. I think it's
kind of an obscure call too. Like you don't get that. Like, oh, you can't assume a double play there. So you like it's. That's
So I
pretty
don't-
deep.
so I don't-
Olin,
so I
Olin
don't-
in his bag.
So I don't know why, as a
cooking.
committee, well, you assume that. Plus, but what I hate the committees because I don't like. I'd rather, if you're going to do this, I'd rather they still have the computers.
Is it just me, guys, or do they put the whoever they're like, who can make us look the worst in this room? Let's put him up there as the spokesman or her. Like, it's like every time that whoever it is they trot out there is like some Frankenstein jackass that just every other word puts his foot in his mouth. And it's like, I don't understand. Do they say, who's the least qualified to go represent us week after week? Let's put them out there. Can we just get like someone with some good energy and someone that knows what they're talking about, that has a normal name, that doesn't look like a total, like, I don't understand that part of it.
I'm just saying that if you have two coaches on a, like when they had the guy who was from Barry Alvarez,
Alvarez.
a guy whose his whole background is power football. Does a team that runs a spread does to that guy, does that look like a good as good a team to him as the team that runs?
I'll
power?
give you. I'll
People
answer your
are
question.
biased.
I'll answer the question for you. Would Hunter Goodwin be biased on that panel? Like this guy, like if you run with less than 3 tight ends, he is has such an agenda against you. And I'm joking, but I'm being serious.
Right.
Like there is certainly that, and that's why you have a number of people to hopefully, counter and check such things. But I'll say this: I think the committee had the toughest task ever on their hands. But I do think, Olin, I'm going to go back to that. I think A&M got left out for good. They cast typed them and stereotyped them as a no offense football team when they watched that. For whatever reason, after that LSU game, A&M was just crucified and written off in a game they won 20-7, and no one was talking about how incredible the Aggie defense was that night.
Which was led by
Elko. Absolutely. And
I'm trying to.
way, do you remember Elko's tweet after
Yeah, I
the
do.
playoff
That's
thing?
right, yeah.
That's been making
Never
the rounds.
watch
I'll never
ESPN.
watch it. But point being, I think the way that thing went, I think Florida State got put in that same pigeonhole where they said their offense is going to stink. It's not exciting.
But what about that
We
defense?
got these other options. I agree with you, but
Well, did
transition. Go ahead.
transition because I was trying to get us to.
Elko.
We wanted to talk a little bit about coaches because that's
Yeah.
blowing up the message board.
Yeah, I
didn't
think
know if you want to.
I wrote about that a little bit. We got out on Football Scoop.
Yeah.
That a couple guys were staying at Duke, including strength coach and Tyler Santucci. And just for clarification of what I talked about, strength coach was not coming. I think that was like more of a. If you go check, he's moved around a little bit lately, and I think that was, hey, we're happy here, we're gonna stay living here. And he never. See, the problem is it got out a few days ago on various things that he was
I think
coming.
Football Scoop was the one that put
Did
it
they
out.
say he was
Yeah.
coming?
Well,
He
they
was-
said A&M fans, you might want to really dive
He
into this
he
guy.
was never coming, and I have that on pretty good authority. That was never the case. So, in other words, Elko's been. It's one of the positions he's been looking at and how he's going to fill it for a week now. It wasn't like this was some blindside yesterday thing. And then in terms of Santucci, look, there's a reality here. He was on the plane with him from Notre Dame. Those two are very close when he came to be the DC here. He's the only guy that came with him from South Bend. He went to Wake. He brought him back as his linebackers coach after 2 years. Jimbo, he was here. Then he brought him to Duke. And for people wondering, he let him call the plays. Mike Elko, as a head coach, was not calling the defensive plays. He's the head coach. And Imagine that.
That hasn't always mattered around here.
So it's important to clarify,
Sure, yeah.
right? Like, because people were wondering that. I'm giving you your answer right now. Santucci was. So I don't believe he was going to come back as the DC, which I don't know. Was that not? I don't know that was written in that article. It felt like it was coming almost from the Duke side of things in terms of the leak and the intel, because there was not the detail that really to me mattered, which is that he would have been coming to coach linebackers. And I get it. Like, you're the DC. You went there from here to be a DC. You come back here. I understand, like, saying, man, I'm not interested in that. What excites me about it is it tells me that Mike Elko is sitting here going, I've got an open DC job, and I really, nothing against Tooch at all, but I really have an opportunity here to knock this thing out of the park and not go with, inexperience. I can not have an inexperienced DC. I don't have to do that here. I'm going to take full advantage of the resources at my disposal here and truly go figure it out. And Elko very well. Let him put a ton of thought into what he's going to do at DC and OC and give him a ton of money to figure that out.
He's not a guy that's going to make a flippant decision.
No.
Like, it's going to be extremely measured. And everybody talked about, you read the Football Scoop stuff, and like, I was going back this week and reading how everybody was like, man, the hire of Kevin Johns as the OC at Duke, I'm not saying he's coming here.
And he could. We're not saying he's not either.
But when he did it at Duke, everybody's like, man, that's a really good hire. Like, you have to like really do some digging to go get that guy. So like, that's his process. He's really meticulous. And you'll like this. I've compared him the way he's organized and his plan.
Can I
go
answer?
ahead?
You're going to compare him to Slosh.
Right.
Yeah.
It's exactly right, man. They're very similar in the way they plan and their organization skills.
I don't disagree.
Schloss, who is very aware that you cannot assume a double play.
Yeah.
What a
It's a tie. Hey, so I think it's going to be pretty exciting to see what he does. And then on the Elijah front, I know, again, like, a lot of people want information. They want information. I don't give it when it's not there. I just don't. I don't like doing that. And I do not want – people were celebrating that Elijah was staying a couple days ago, and people took it right to our boards. And I don't understand the race to believe everything you hear nowadays when literally anyone can have a Twitter account. And it's amazing how, if it's good news, how desperate we are to embrace it. I'm not saying Elijah won't stay.
Well, that's perplexing because Elijah,
very early.
I've asked him twice directly, and he said, I said, in any capacity, and he said, yes, I want to be back at Texas A&M. Yeah. And then your new coach comes in and says, I want him here. Mm-hmm. And your athletic director says, we want him here. So it sounds like you hear from three different people, that they want to hear. Well, as a fan, you'd be looking at this, I guess he's going to be here. But
all three of those things are true. Mm-hmm. But when you have a coach that's been here 6 years and you're in a profession where maybe you want to go and see what you can do as a play caller, I would counter and say, do you need to go to Syracuse and be a play caller to become a head coach? If things go well on the look, people aren't rushing to hire assistant coaches from 12 and 12 programs over the last 2 years. Now, if A&M has some early success under Mike Elko, and I think we all sit here and expect that'll happen on defense, with what Elijah just showed over the last few weeks as an interim and the attention that's gotten around the country, I think he's just as likely and perhaps more likely to sit here for a couple years, and he could get head coaching jobs on the level of Syracuse in another year or two, if not 3 at the most. Like, so do you go over there, and I know it's a good friend of his, Coach Brown from Georgia, do you go over there and risk that momentum swing, but also if you're Elijah, you're sitting there going, no, I believe I can do this, and I want the opportunity to call. So I totally understand why he is torn. And yes, he does want to stay. And yes, A&M desperately wants him to stay to the tune of what's my understanding is a 5-year, as much as $1.7 million a year to stay. That would make him the highest paid, I believe, position coach in college football. And of course, there'll be a title with that. He already has the associate head coach title. So I get it. I understand. And I think Aggies should understand. I know Mike Elko understands. So why wouldn't the fans understand while he tries to decide and work through this? Because I absolutely see both sides of it. But there's only so much you can do if you're Ross, if you're Elko. And Elijah is well aware, I believe, of how much he's wanted and how much everybody desires that he stays. And I know he knows he's got a great situation. If he stays here, he's going to get freaking paid. And I think he's going to have a real clear path to being a head coach. But it's also how much of this has been his dream the last 6 years to get up and go out. And look, most of the jobs he's been offered in college football have been similar to what he's doing here. Now, this is a DC play calling offer. It hits differently. So it'll be interesting. And obviously it's a very significant decision. I will say this. If they keep him, it's a freaking home run, and it is a massive swing.
It's a huge shot in the arm.
Yep. And if they don't, it'll be a big hit. But it's also one that I can assure you I would be willing to bet that within a matter of a few days, a couple days, it'll be very quickly. I think Mike Elko would have an answer to that. You know, it's almost like imagine if Elijah just had no connections to you and said, new coaching staff, I'm not starting over here. I've been here 6 years. I'm out. I mean, you have to act as if you're Elko, and I think you'd be crazy to think he's not got a contingency plan.
Billy, do you project that
I project a lot.
That Mike Elko will hire a special teams coach?
Yes, I will. I will actually say that I have it on pretty good authority that he will hire a special teams coach, and that is a part of his structure. He had one at Duke. We looked him up. What's his name?
Doherty.
Doherty, yeah.
Doherty.
So yes, I do. I don't fully expect he will have a special teams coach.
I'm super interested to see what happens on this recruiting trail in this 24 class. Do they come in whenever they get things settled?
Yeah.
And do they start kicking down doors or trying to just nudge their way into places where they haven't been able to get into over the last staff? And then I know people that watch this may not know, but I've talked to you about the 2025 class in the state of Texas. Get ready. Mike Elko and the staff are about to – Mike Elko for sure is about to go on a barnstorming tour across Houston and Dallas, and he is going to get in front of a lot of coaches and a lot of kids. What he's done, what he did last week in Bryan College Station, I thought was an incredible move to start building that goodwill back with the coaches.
Yep.
And he's going to continue to do that. No matter, regardless of what happened here before, he knows it's important for him to start showing face in these high schools across the state of Texas.
Absolutely. And look, and the price of poker, as of about a couple hours ago, went way up.
Yep.
Texas Longhorns are in the playoff. Okay, they're coming for your players. They're coming for that's just people go, well, you worry too much about. No, that's the reality, guys. If you don't recognize that, so holding on to some of these guys, you'll have to fight to hang on to Dom McKinley. You'll have to fight to hang on to Relaford. He was at LSU this weekend. There are other guys you want to go out and get and bring in. You're going to love to try to get Draylon Miller back in. I mean, that would be massive. So there's a lot of recruiting.
Phone's also ringing the other way, too.
Exactly. No question.
There's people calling that.
They are. And where I think it's going to be fascinating, Bronny, and we'll end it on this note. I think it's going to be fascinating to see what kind of names are – you said the phone's ringing the other way. What kind of names are calling portal-wise in? Because you and I have heard a lot from around the country. Some name guys – some guys that people don't know of, and then when you and I start digging into what they did at these different schools, whether it's Pac-12, Big 12, ACC, Big 10, you look at it and you go, oh, that one's interesting. There's a lot of them, OB, and I think Mike Elko and whatever staff he puts together, I know I know there's going to be a completely different approach and mentality as it comes towards, as we've said before, and we haven't seen enough of here, attacking the portal. And I don't mean going in there to fill out line depth from Rice and Boston College and four-string guys so you can complete your practice team O-line. I don't mean that. I don't mean recruiting a receiver for 2 years from now because these guys, I mean impact players at key positions and even positions maybe that you don't expect just because you're trying to upgrade your football team.
Well, the Aggies have.
He's been thinking about this next line for a long time.
I
was watching you.
Yeah, he's been thinking about something.
No, really not. I'm just saying, the Aggies historically have always been very supportive of their program, sometimes even when it was not allowed to be.
Yeah.
I would expect that you're going to see a lot of Aggies step up and want to be involved in the NIL. They already are, but I would think even the common guy, I just wonder if is there going to be at some point a place where, like in your income tax, when you fill out your return, it says you want to contribute this much to, press, is it going to be on when you buy something? Hey,
that ain't bad idea.
I believe that's called stack. I think we did that.
No, but I'm talking about
like when you go in when you buy groceries, they say, do you want to donate $1 to the American Heart Association?
Hey, dude, we've been around.
That ain't a bad idea.
Hey, we've been around the SEC. Guys, if you haven't, and you haven't seen, there's kiosks and booths at these stadiums for NIL and they're everywhere.
This is going to be too much information. All right, I get it, but
dump button ready again.
When I was in the press box urinal at Ole Miss, there's a big sign that's telling you how to contribute to Ole Miss's NIL.
Yeah,
I mean, I guess they wanted a captive audience.
Did you pee on the sign?
That's right.
It was high. At my age.
All right, we're out.
A lot of jokes. We'll talk tomorrow noon. You'll be back. I'm Billy. He's Brauninger. He's Buchanan.
The B team.
This is the B team, Loochador Podcast, brought to you by our friends at Academy Sports and Outdoors.